I'm Captain Chuck Dyer, Chairman of the Communications Committee of the FedEx Master Executive Council of the Airline Pilots Association. Today I'm joined by Captain Pete Harmon, the Chairman of the Central Air Safety Committee, and Captain Paul Zahner, the Pilot Representative of the ASAP Event Review Committee. Welcome aboard, both you guys. Appreciate you coming here. Pete, what can you tell me about ASAP?
Well, ASAP is the essentially, it's a three-way agreement to include the company, FedEx, and the FAA and the Airline Pilots Association. And it establishes a three-man event review committee that takes what used to be essentially safety reports, reviews incidents or events that happen, and determine what were the causal factors and what can be done to fix them.
Who should file an ASAP report, Pete?
Anybody who has any abnormal event in flight. A classic example would be an altitude deviation or a taxiway incursion or a wrong taxi route, something along those lines. And an important thing to remember about that is there's been a recent change in ATC procedures. For instance, if you have a minor altitude deviation and the controller catches you and says, what altitude are you at? And you tell them, well, we're at 31.4 and we're correcting back to 31. And you get back to 31, the controller says, and you say, sorry about that, and the controller says, no problem, there was no traffic conflict. Now ATC has auditors that go back 2 and 3 weeks later and look at that, and they will file what's called a PD, a pilot deviation report, and they're going to start looking into it. So if that happens, even if the controller says no problem, it's a good idea to file an ASAP report. It covers you, it covers your crew members from any possible violations from the FAA, assuming your report is accepted and all criteria are met.
Well, Paul, as one of the members of the Event Review Committee, I'm sure you see a lot of these reports. What kind of things are you looking for to be reported?
Actually, we like everything the pilots think is important or unimportant to report. The more information we have about an event, the easier it is for us to decide what to do with it.
Is there any mandatory guidance in FOM 215?
Yeah, in FOM 215 there is a list of events that have to be filed as a flight safety report. If you want to make it an ASAP report, so much the better, because an ASAP report covers the requirement of the flight safety report requirement.
Why should I file an ASAP report?
You want to file an ASAP report for two reasons. One is to provide us with information about the event so that someone else doesn't make the same mistake. And the other is so that you protect yourself and the other crew members from FAA enforcement if the FAA should become interested in it. They allow us to process the pilot deviation and, in effect, produce only a letter of warning or a letter of correction to the individual instead of what was previously a certificate enforcement, which would involve discipline.
Just to make sure I understand, you made a statement there that said to file a report would protect you and the other crew members. As I'm understanding it, you need to file a report individually?
Each crew member should file their own report. The FAA requires that in order for them to be afforded the safety or the protection of the ASAP system, that each crew member file their own report. There's also protection from the company discipline. And that was one of the hard parts we had to get this whole system, is the company had a tough time getting over that hurdle, but now that same ASAP report will protect the pilot from company disciplinary action. And we prefer that it's not cut and paste. We get a lot of cut and paste responses, and we get 2 responses of the same report, and that doesn't really help us.
You say you prefer that they don't come that way. Why?
The more information we get about an event, the better. But if we get the same report twice, it doesn't really help us a lot. We still understand the event, but the more information we get, the better.
Okay.
Different point of views.
If I'm out, I'm just thinking out in the world of operations, I'm out and I have some deviation, and ATC, either speaks to me of it or doesn't, but I'm thinking of the scenario where they come up and they notice it, and then the controller comes back to me and says, no worries, press on. Am I covered?
No, don't believe him, because it used to be, up and before the beginning of this year, the controller was the one that filed the reports. But the FAA changed their style, and now, like Pete said, it's either the supervisor who's standing behind that controller or perhaps an auditor weeks later who will file the pilot deviation. And so if you haven't filed in time, by the time we find out that the FAA is interested in the event, it's too late for you to file.
Well, you talk about being too late to file. That indicates there's a deadline for filing.
There is. There's two types of reports. There's sole source reports, and then there is non-sole source report. We're talking about non-sole source reports where the pilot knows about it and somebody else knows about it, in this case the FAA. If that's the situation, then in a non-sole source report you have 24 hours after your domestic duty period is over or 48 hours after your international duty period is over in order to file that report. And you go to the flight safety section of the pilot website and you can find the WVAS system there.
Pete, any jeopardy that I incur if I don't file a report?
In fact, quite the opposite is true. You incur the jeopardy by not filing. You leave yourself open to certificate action and or company discipline in the event that something happens, somebody knows about it, and it comes up. Under the old system, if, for instance, there was an altitude deviation, the FAA would file a pilot deviation, and that would go through the system and come back to you, and if you had a NASA report, you still got violated. But the NASA report would protect you from the actual enforcement. But that violation stayed on your ticket for the rest of your life, and anybody could see it. Now, if you file and your ASAP report is accepted, that pilot deviation report goes to the FedEx FAA POI's office, Primary Ops Inspector's office, and they get asked, do you have an ASAP report on this event? And they look, and they do. And they go, yes, we do. That stops that deviation in its tracks, and it's coded as an ASAP fix. That it has gone to ASAP Event Review Committee, and they have taken care of it, and it's all said and done. Nothing goes beyond that. And Paul mentioned the letter of correction or letter of warning. If that happens, that goes into your file at the FAA for 2 years, and the only person that can see that is an FAA inspector. And after 2 years, that's expunged. Even the inspectors don't see it. It's like it never happened.
Excellent. Pete mentioned something here several times, NASA reports. Does this replace a NASA report?
It doesn't replace the NASA report. The NASA report has different parameters for reporting, but it essentially supplements it. It gives a pilot a better protection than the NASA report. The NASA report will give an amnesty once every 5 years, whereas in ASAP there is no limit like that. You could have one a month, but then you'd probably get noticed.
Let me jump in. You can file when you're filing an ASAP report. You have the ability to put a check mark in the box on that web form that says, "Make this a NASA report too," and it gets printed out and sent to NASA. Absolutely,
right. Fair enough. On that, I mean, the other, of course, report that's in this venue would be the company's flight safety report. Does this replace that?
It meets all the requirements of the company's flight safety reporting system. So you have a choice of filing a flight safety report or an ASAP report. I choose ASAP. It's going to offer more protection and better data collection around for everybody involved. So for all those events,
say a mandatory flight safety report?
An ASAP report meets that requirement, yes.
I mean, do I need to be on a company computer on property to do this, or can I do it from home?
No, you can do it from home.
Okay, fair enough. Last thought on it was, I mean, really, how open and honest should guys be when they're in this system?
You should be as open and honest as possible, because filing a report will not put you in jeopardy. Okay, there is nothing in an ASAP report that will make your life worse than if you hadn't filed a report.
Anything to add to that, Pete?
I do have one other thing, actually. In the event you can't meet those deadlines, either you landed, your laptop was broken, and you're in Hong Kong, or something along those lines, there is an ASAP hotline number, and we can put it on a chyron on the bottom, I assume, but it's 901-224-5203. And those same deadlines apply, 24 hours domestically, 48 hours internationally. You make that telephone call. From that point, you have 3 calendar days to actually get online and finish filing the report with the company. If you're overseas and you need to make that call and you don't have Skype available or something along those lines, pick up the telephone in your hotel room, make that long distance call, and expense it to the company. The company will pay for that call.
Well, what I'd like to say is thanks to both of you for stopping by. Paul, Pete, really, it's a privilege to have you here. You guys out there no doubt feel the passion these guys bring to this program and how important it is. and how important it is to you to take advantage of what this program's doing for all of us. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this program. I want to encourage you to stay informed and stay engaged as we go forward, and fly safe. Till next time.